Notorious gang members who caused misery in Cheshire have been jailed. The drug criminals, from Manchester, will serve 109 years in prison for flooding Macclesfield with cocaine and heroin. The thugs wreaked havoc in the town with their drug dealing and serious and volatile disputes between rival gangs. Almost every day the community would play witness to the gangs brandishing weapons in order to threaten other drug dealers and users in the area. One witness said a firearm was used to issue threats. There were also reports of gangs attacking each other with machetes and one gang member allegedly having their finger amputated. Police also pursued a gang of youths in a car following reports of intimidation linked to drug dealing and recovered a large sword inside the vehicle. On 2 occasions innocent members of the public were assaulted and their mobile phones deliberately damaged after they captured drugs being dealt openly in local parks. The gang's the AJ team Nico Edgar. This gang, all based in Manchester, was headed up by Nico Edgar, assisted closely by Cason Thomas and Joshua Beardmore as the local dealer. In March last year, Edgar was caught driving into Macclesfield with wraps of heroin and cocaine in his car ready to be sold to users. On numerous occasions he sold drugs to an officer acting as a user and, along with Thomas, was spotted making numerous drug runs to an address in Macclesfield. Read more. On a daily basis the gang's graft phone would send flyer messages to between 50 to 60 phone numbers advertising deals to local users. One read, "AJ back on this number every day from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. best in town." They are believed to have supplied 3.44 kilograms of Class A drugs. The J-Team Fabian Wilkes. This county lines team would send around 60 flyer messages to drug users on a daily basis. Fabian Wilkes would hire cars to travel into Macclesfield from Manchester where he would supply cocaine and heroin to users. Both Wilkes and China Jasper, who had significant roles, were caught directly supplying undercover officers with drugs. On September 28, 2018, Wilkes drove off in his BMW when police attempted to stop him. A pursuit took place and he drove through a red light and onto a pavement next to a bus stop. Read more. He eventually came to a stop after a HGV blocked his route and was boxed in by 2 police cars. Shortly before being stopped and arrested outside Macclesfield Football Club, he attempted to discard a bag containing between 50 and 80 deals of Class A by throwing them out of the car window. He was found with £319 in his possession and a phone which had sent out 78 flyer messages that day. The junior team Claire Regan. The junior team's county lines activity operated from Manchester with graft phones used to facilitate and coordinate the supply of heroin and cocaine into Macclesfield. Undercover officers were deployed into the local community to snare the junior team, with Liam Parsons, Thomas Cole, Mark Lovenbury, Claire Regan and Michael Wickhamcock supplying heroin directly to them. Kane Birch controlled the graft phone which, on one occasion, was used to send out 221 flyer messages in 1 hour advertising the sale of cocaine and heroin. Read more. Following Birch's arrest, Wade Wilson took over the running of the graft phone. He was caught buying a £15 top-up from a corner shop on Moss Lane to be used to send flyer messages on the graft phone 25 minutes later. On CCTV, Wilson was caught buying a £15 top-up from a corner shop on Moss Lane to be used to send flyer messages on a graft phone 25 minutes later. Parsons, who operated as a street dealer, traveled from Manchester to Macclesfield by train with the sole purpose of coordinating the supply of cocaine and heroin. He would base himself in different addresses belonging to local users and use their homes as a den in return for giving them drugs. Kane Birch was arrested at the Village Hotel in Warrington where he was found in the leisure facilities alongside Macaulay Peacock. Video loading. Video unavailable. Click to play. Tap to play. The video will start in 8. Cancel. The Arties team Rico Robinson. Throughout the operation this team changed their graft phone number up to 13 times in an attempt to avoid being detected. The leader of the gang, Rico Robinson, would supply drugs to users and oversee the dealing. He was spotted consistently traveling into Macclesfield by train from Manchester on a daily basis. Read more. He attempted to conceal his identity by wearing his hood up as he dealt Class A drugs to users at the gates of a cemetery. When he was arrested at the train station, he had £430 in his possession and had tried to swallow his SIM card, which had been used that morning to send 67 flare messages. Tate Taylor Bell taught a 16-year-old boy how to deal drugs while he himself would regularly travel from Manchester to supply cocaine and heroin. Michael Hayes was arrested at an address on Buckfast Close in Macclesfield where he admitted supplying drugs for Robinson and, in return for cash and drugs, he allowed his home to be used as a drugs den. Redmore Detective Inspector Adam Alexander, of Macclesfield Local Policing Unit, said, "These gangs were not only causing serious harm to each other but also to the local community, and that was of great concern to us. For local residents, Macclesfield is their home, yet it was reaching the point where they were too scared to walk down their own street or visit the shop for fear of what violence or drug dealing they would encounter. It was clear this activity was only going to get worse unless we found a long-term solution to disrupt the gangs who were brazenly violent. That solution was a year-long operation by Cheshire Constabulary's Serious and Organised Crime Unit to get to the root of the gangs in order to stop the violence and disrupt the drug dealing that was destroying the lives of those who lived in the community." Today, October 18th, almost 18 months since that operation began, the remaining drug dealers were locked up. 7 gangs involving 21 men and 2 women are now behind bars for a total of 109 years. Read more. Further sentences will be given to Fabian Wilkes, China Jasper and Nathan Wright on October 25th. The court heard that the most violent act by the gangs involved a young teenage boy who suffered horrific injuries to his face after he was slashed by a large knife in the Macclesfield area, believed to have been fueled by drugs supply. The investigation later discovered the boy was found to have been a victim of criminal exploitation by one of the gangs. There were also reports of young teenagers being used by the gangs as street dealers in Macclesfield. As the investigation progressed, it became clear that the leaders of the 4 gangs were all operating under a county lines drugs conspiracy by supplying Class A drugs from the city of Manchester. They would use a phone line, known as a graph, to receive drug orders, then recruit local street dealers to sell the heroin and cocaine to users in the small towns of Macclesfield and Congleton. Follow reporter Gemma Sherlock on social media. To follow Gemma on Twitter, click here. Or to like her Facebook page and keep up to date with the latest breaking news, click here. Here's the link to Cheshire Live's main Facebook page where we share our latest stories. Codenamed Operation Vulcanize, close observation and the gang's use of mobile phones uncovered the extent of their activity. This included exploiting vulnerable adults who may have needed to pay off a drugs debt or were addicts themselves. One gang was found to have exploited a vulnerable 30-year-old woman and coerced her into dealing drugs on their behalf. The gangs would either befriend, manipulate or force their way into their homes with the intention of using it to store and sell drugs, a term known as cuckooing. People were seen making frequent visits to the properties. Drivers and couriers would come and go and calls were made outside the address. Street dealers would use alleyways, a cemetery and parks to supply users with heroin and cocaine. Many of the deals took place during the day while children played and members of the public walked nearby. Detective Chief Inspector Mike Evans, of Cheshire's Serious and Organised Crime Unit, said, "In cases where there are pockets of gangs operating a busy drugs market in a small town, serious violence will take place predominantly behind the scenes, and most of it going unreported to police." These drug dealers had no connection to Macclesfield and would travel into the town on a daily basis purely to prey on local users. What came to light during the operation was the harm the gangs inflicted on vulnerable people and residents within this community, while also going to great lengths to exploit youngsters for their profit margins. The team worked incredibly hard for a long period of time to eradicate these drug gangs and their violence, to make the local community a safer place and to protect vulnerable people who feel trapped in this world. Read more. I hope this reassures residents that we do take action, and I would encourage those who think drug activity is happening in their area to contact Cheshire Police on 101 or Crime Stoppers anonymously on 0800 555 111. Police and Crime Commissioner David Keane added, County Lines drugs activity can have a devastating effect on our communities. Local residents should feel safe in their hometown and not feel bullied or threatened by violent offenders inflicting havoc on their community. The hard work and determination of the detectives who worked on this case has made Macclesfield a safer place and has ensured that dangerous gangs have been taken off Cheshire's streets. These prosecutions should send a clear message to offenders that serious and organized crime will not be tolerated by police in Cheshire, David Rutley, MP for Macclesfield, said, having recently been out on the beat with officers who are focused on disrupting drug dealing and supplying in our area. I have seen for myself the clear commitment and focus of Cheshire Police in tackling the scourge of County Lines drug crimes. This sentencing, like those before it, is a testament to the hard work and dedication of our local policemen and women, whose actions are helping to keep drugs out of our towns and our communities safer. Read more. They have my support in this vital work. Gang member sentences in the AJ Gang, all sentenced on August 23, 2019. Nico Edgar, aged 21, of Tipton Drive, Manchester, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply cocaine and heroin and was sentenced to 6 years and 4 months imprisonment. Kaysen Thomas, aged 21, of Oakcliff Road, Manchester, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply cocaine and heroin and was sentenced to 4 years and 8 months imprisonment. Joshua Beardmore, aged 26, of Rose Street, Macclesfield, pleaded guilty to supplying heroin and cocaine and was sentenced to 18 months imprisonment. Laura Smith, aged 26, of Elizabeth Drive in Newcastle under Lyme, pleaded guilty to possession with intent to supply cocaine and heroin and was given a 12-month sentence of imprisonment, suspended for 2 years. The Junior Gang, all sentenced on September 20, 2019. Wade Wilson, aged 31, of Reeds Avenue, Blackpool, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply cocaine and heroin and was sentenced to 4 years and 6 months imprisonment. Kane Birch, aged 23, of Ainsbrook Avenue, Manchester, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply cocaine and heroin and was sentenced to 4 years imprisonment. Liam Parsons, aged 19, of Green Street, Middleton, Manchester, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply cocaine and heroin was sentenced to 3 years imprisonment. Mark Lovenbury, aged 35, of Dawson Road, Bollington, pleaded guilty to supplying cocaine and heroin and was sentenced to 2 years and 4 months imprisonment. Thomas Cole, aged 33, from Macclesfield, pleaded guilty to supplying cocaine and was sentenced to 2 years and 4 months imprisonment. Claire Regan, aged 44, of Pitt Street, Macclesfield, pleaded guilty to supplying cocaine and heroin and was sentenced to 2 years imprisonment. Michael Wickham, aged 24, of Queens Road, Oldham, pleaded guilty to supplying cocaine and heroin and was sentenced to 5 years and 8 months imprisonment. The Artie Gang, Taylor Bell, Hayes and a 17-year-old boy were sentenced on June 21, 2019. Robinson was sentenced on August 29, 2019. Rico Robinson, aged 29, of Moorland Road, Old Trafford, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply cocaine and heroin in Cheshire and supplying cocaine and heroin in the Greater Manchester area. He was sentenced to 9 years total imprisonment. Taylor Bell, aged 22, of Highfield Road, Stratford, pleaded guilty to supplying heroin and cocaine was sentenced to 3 years and 4 months imprisonment. Michael Hayes, aged 37, of Buckfast Close, Macclesfield, pleaded guilty to supplying cocaine and heroin and breaching a suspended sentence in relation to possession of a taser. He was sentenced to 2 years imprisonment. A 17-year-old from Macclesfield pleaded guilty to supplying heroin and cocaine and was given a youth rehabilitation order. The J Gang, all due to be sentenced on October 25. Fabian Wilkes, aged 31, of Donnison Street, Manchester, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply cocaine and heroin. Wilkes is already serving 5 years imprisonment for possession of heroin and cocaine with intent to supply and dangerous driving following an incident in Macclesfield on September 28, 2018, which forms part of Operation Vulcanize. China Jasper, aged 23, of Wilbraham Road, Manchester, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply cocaine and heroin. Nathan Wright, aged 28 of Middleton Road, Manchester, pleaded guilty to supplying heroin. The Mo Gang, sentenced on June 24, 2019. Darren Green, aged 53, of Hawthorne Way, Macclesfield, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply cocaine and heroin and was sentenced to 5 years and 7 months imprisonment. The Scouse Katy Gang, sentenced on July 30, 2019. David Carty, aged 31, Enterbus Road, Handsworth Wood, Birmingham, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply cocaine and heroin and was sentenced to 3 years and 9 months imprisonment. The Paddy Gang, sentenced on July 25, 2019. Matthew Hughes, aged 26, Bank Street, Rookery, Staffordshire, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply heroin and cocaine, assault and criminal damage. He was sentenced to 3 years and 8 months imprisonment. The Soul Traders Gang, Cabo Masalila, aged 28, of Cherry Avenue, Manchester, pleaded guilty to possession of heroin and cocaine with intent to supply and dangerous driving following an incident in Macclesfield on January 28, 2019 and supplying heroin and cocaine in the Cheshire